Hello, everyone. Hello, David. Hello, Xinghe and Binbin.
Oh, hi Susan, hi David, hi Bingming.
Yeah, just waiting a couple of minutes for everyone to join. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. I'm going to put it in view mode. Refresh. Yeah, I see Akash pulling up his Zoom right now. Okay, Akash, I've joined. Yeah, let's get started. Yeah, thanks for sending the PR, Xinghe. And I see there's a question for me on the AAD resource endpoint.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit confused. Why is the AAD resource? Okay, so it's a resource to the container registry.
yes, correct. So yes, in the code I refers to the workload identity also provider code, and it also using this AAD resource endpoint to get the container registry token. So I think this endpoint is public cloud only because it ends with an ET. So I'm wondering where may I find somewhere the document mentioned this public cloud endpoint, and if possible I can get the endpoint for the storage cloud such as Fairfax and Mooncake.
I see. I don't know on top of my head, but I'll find out if there's like different endpoint.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, in fact, I haven't tested it in the US government cloud and China cloud yet. I may also test it in these days.
So does this mean the Azure workload identity also need the Fairfax cloud definition?
No, I think it is because if for identity, in fact, for managing identity, it doesn't need to declare the endpoint. But the code side it tries to use the identity token to fetch the to fetch the container registry token. In this step, it tries to connect to the it needs to provide an uh, resource it needs to provide the container registry endpoint. In fact, the workload identity also use this variable.
I see. So potentially, like if the registry is in, like say the Mooncake cloud, we would also need a different URL to talk to the container registry in Mooncake.
Yes, normally it is like this.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
The SDK doesn't provide these constants.
No, I failed to find this constants yet. Maybe
Okay.
yeah.
Do we use an SDK, Eric?
I mean, the Azure Go SDK, I think, has a handful of things like this. So it could be worth just doing a pass and seeing if those are somewhere.
If we can find the constants in SDK, it will be help. Yeah, correct. I will try to find it.
Cool. And another comment here on the client ID, Xinghe, the I think the CSI driver today specifies the client ID used to fetch the key vault. Do you expect it to be the same identity here?
Yes, I haven't raised my PR related to the chart change. I expected to use the same one. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you'll be like taking the value that's in the value file and then just stubbing it in here. Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good. Akash, any additional comments or questions for Xinghe?
Nope. I think I left a few comments, but one question was that the follow-up PR will include the chart changes as well as some of the documentation changes as well, right?
Yes, I asked Susan before. She suggested me to raise two PRs. The first one is only for the Ratify change, and when the Ratify image is bumped, and then I make the change on the chart. Is that correct?
Sure, that works as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
at the documentation change, like describing like when would you use the managed identity auth provider can go with the code change. Like I see you've checked this box, like this change requires a documentation update. So maybe you can put like a little walkthrough on how to use this new auth provider. That'll be great.
Yeah, currently the only usage change is to manually edit the Ratify edit the Ratify configuration to edit the auth provider as the example I show here.
I see.
Yeah.
No, just in the conversation.
Got it.
Yeah, the JSON file, the config JSON.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull up an example of our config map. I think it's in the chart. Template config map. So typically we introduce flags like this. So for example, if we had configured the values file to enable Azure workload identity,
Yes.
then this new block would be added for
Yes,
the new auth provider. So yeah, I think this file should be modified, but I see your point. Like because we haven't bumped up the version of the Ratify build,
yes,
the config change won't work with the current released binary, which is why you're holding back.
Yes.
Susan, there's also that other document with the ORS auth provider. If you could just bring that up.
Yep.
It's in the docs folder.
Got it. So let me go to the docs. This one, right?
Yes, yeah. So if you could just add like another section, just kind of how like workload identity is, and then you'd just give a sample
Sure.
configuration, how would it look like with that?
Sure thing.
Yep.
Yeah, but one question is that if I'm using a managed identity, is normally it should be on a AKS cluster, or you should run the Ratify on an Azure VM. So and you need to assign the managed identity onto the VM access VM access or the VM. So in this document, should I just need a customer need the executor to run the run my auth provider in an AKS cluster? Because what I concern is that for example the workload identity document is mentioned to run in the AKS, but if I do not have the latest chart, I can I'm not sure how to download the download the Ratify in my PR change.
So even though you don't have the latest chart, you can always obviously use the checked out version on the master branch and then use that, which will have the updated change. But for the documentation changes, I see what you're saying, that even if you specify here, those changes aren't reflected necessarily in the latest release. I think that's okay if there's a little bit of a time where we haven't released and the documentation shows that it does exist, but I would defer to Susan or David to determine that. So
Yes, because for now I can also test it by the locally by pushing my own chart and image version. So I'm just confusing. I'm just wondering when should I update the document? It should be I should update as the first PRI when the first PRI raised, or I finish all the chart and the Ratify change.
I think you can modify the documentation with the code change. Then, like later, if we put up the PR, like it's clear that this code change maps to this set of features. And I think, like as Akash was saying, like little bit of inconsistency, like I think is okay. But David, do you have other feedback on when should the documentation be updated?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I was on mute.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so our documentation is still a bit of a mess. So you have this as a separate update, right? I'm just looking at the PR. You don't have a doc update at all. Yeah, I would just put it, you're thinking to just put it inside of here, the ORAP auth provider?
Yes, another auth provider may name the Azure Managed Identity.
Yeah, David, the question is like, is it okay to include the document update with the code update without releasing a new version? Like basically we've released the doc, but the binary that's being released is inconsistent.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no. Yeah, I would go ahead. I mean, I would put them in with it'd be good to have it in the sub, but it's going to basically break things because it's not released, right? Yeah,
any chart update would break things. And the doc would kind of refer to the latest about to be released experience that's not currently available. But once the PR is merged, like the code is in the master branch and it can be built locally, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I mean, it would be nice if you could have a separate PR for the doc update. And then we could kind of, you know, hold on that, but I'm not, yeah. I mean, right now our docs need a lot of refreshing anyway, but I understand the point. I just would rather you add like create the actual updates needed for the relevant PR while it's fresh in your mind, even if it's a PR that stays open versus do nothing and forget about it. If that makes sense.
Okay. So you mean I should separate the PR document change in another PR?
Yeah, I think it would be nice because even
yeah.
at a bare minimum, even if we merged that earlier, we could still reference just that change versus the entire thing.
So I can raise the PR earlier to make us easier to review, but not a hurry to merge. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Thank you so much, Xinghe. And also, as Xinghe was bringing this up, like after the managed identity auth provider merges in, David, do we want to push out another version?
Yeah, I mean,
of
it's been a
Ratify?
while. Yeah, it's been a while. So yeah, I mean, it'd be good to have another release. I know we've been putting a lot of stuff into beta, but yeah, I think it could make sense to do maybe another alpha release like in the short term here.
Yeah, so sounds great. So Xinghe, after this merges, we'll see the manifest change that Akash is working on, if that's close, and then we can release a version maybe in the next couple of weeks.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, so while we're on this PR, do you have other additional questions before we move on?
Not for mine.
Cool. Yeah, the next item that I've put on the agenda is to review the store CRD spec. Just to continue our discussion from last week. Last week we reviewed the referrer CRD. So what I had in mind is just the similar to what the configuration file we have today. So just bringing that up on the screen. So the store today specifies how to fetch the artifacts used for verification. So it can be an SBOM, it can be a signature, and it, depending on the configurations in the deployment file, we enable different auth providers to talk to the remote registry. So from what we have today, I have defined the store spec to be this structure. So we have the name, address for future inter-process communication, the auth provider with a mode string. So comparing to our configuration map with name, I'm not sure if we want to rename this name to mode because we already have a name here. Like, how do people feel about this rename?
Can you go back to the other one?
Yep.
One more.
Oh, sorry, that one.
So the one you're saying to rename is authentication provider.
Yeah, so the mode would be like, okay, are we using Kubernetes secret? Are we using AWS or Azure or
type, maybe?
Yeah, type.
Yeah, type sounds good to me.
Yeah,
cool.
I was gonna say type probably makes sense to me.
Okay, and should I rename the auth provider interface as well? Or do we want to just keep that? Like, is it called name in auth provider today?
Yes, it is. So I think we'd have to change that as well.
Yeah, I can do the rename.
Okay.
And Xinghe, just leave your one as name, and when I create my PR, I'll be able to refactor the MSI auth provider as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and for the objects, currently we have the other property that is not generic enough. I think it's cosine enabled, true or false, and that'll become a parameter to the Aurus property. Does that make sense to everyone?
You're just saying this gets deserialized by the verifier itself?
Yeah, by the store. Oh, is that a shared property today? Let me double check. So at the store level, we're saying for this store, should we fetch cosine artifacts? Or should we try to fetch?
So
the glued on piece.
Actually, a couple things, Susan. So
Yep.
the auth providers are right now Aura store specific, so I think that's also a custom field. And then I don't think we can just use the name, because different auth providers have different fields. For example, the Kubernetes secrets provider actually takes in more fields. So we may need like the same thing that you've done. Use like a raw extension for that as well. So
I see. So we're saying maybe not all store needs auth provider. So currently it's only something specific to Aurus.
Yeah, so it was done this way because
keep it open.
Yeah, so like the Aurus auth provider might not be able to be used with other stores like a SQL refer store if we decided to do that in the future. That has a completely different authentication flow. So if that store decided to have its own authentication providers, then it could define it on its own. There's not like a universal template for that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll be moving the auth provider, like basically just object. Like auth provider would be like its own object, and depending on which auth provider you're using, it'll have another set of properties.
Yes, that's correct.
Got it. Okay. So we'll have cosine enabled and auth provider. And David, you had a suggestion of like in the future, adding the key vault path along with the store. Can you clarify like what it looks like in this JSON?
Yeah, it would probably be whatever the unique identifier is to the path of the key vault root, where all the store like certs and things would be underneath it.
It'll be in the parameters object. Hello, I can't hear David.
Yeah,
Hi.
I'm just looking at the what you have on there.
Sure.
Maybe
we can, so this is the spec because it's very open for the parameters property. Maybe we can.
Well, so you have a URL file path, which just kind of is this what throws me off a little. So URL file path, that's like the local Ratify thing, that'd be one thing. But if it's the remote store location, then that's different, right? Like for Key Vault.
I see. I have to look at what Lee was proposing. Was Lee proposing only the verifier inter-process communication or verifier and store?
Lee was proposing both, but he kind of threw out a key one as this weird third thing potentially. I mean, it's something we have to just agree on what we're doing.
Yeah, so this address is more for that purpose. Like if there was a store that was maybe in a local binary, or there's an address that we talk to the store. I think this address here is not the address to the key vault. It's what I'm trying to clarify.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think if we're kind of thinking about this as like local to Ratify local to Ratify, meaning like either it's file system or Kubernetes, then that can make sense by itself. And then a separate one, which is anything like fetching anything from a remote location type of experience being separate. I mean, that's possible. I was just thinking it's all kind of the same, because at the end of the day, you know, your verifier likely needs some form of storage to configure and run things. But yeah, I'm open.
Yeah, maybe next time I can come up with, like, if we were to put the key vault along with the like fetching, how do we fetch the artifact versus how do we fetch the key vault, the certificate, in one JSON, like what would it look like? Because looking at the definition, because of this object parameter here, it's like it's not very clear on the structure. So maybe next meeting I'll mock up like a JSON sample, just like similar to the Notary verifier that I did last time. Yeah, but like this is at least like the basics of the stored spec.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, I will continue working on creating the factory methods for creating a store object from the CRD store spec. Yeah, that's everything I had. I know Binbin was on the call. Binbin, do you have any questions for us?
I don't have a question for the store spec, but actually I have another question. I don't know if it's okay to ask it.
Yeah, sure. Feel free to ask.
So yesterday I was looking at the Ratify code and I have a security concern. So currently we can use like notation or other like verifier, and we just verify something like integrity, but looks like we just pass the signature and get the certificates from the signature, but we don't verify if those certificates are trusted or not. So maybe I missed something, but because I didn't find the code that we verify if it's trusted. So I think maybe we need to add that part in Ratify.
Yeah, so the trusted certificate store is going to be something that's going to be added once we have that integration with notation.
Okay.
Because there's a trust policy, trust store piece, at least for that verifier.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes sense for Ratify to try and reinvent a trust store by itself. But inherently, when you add a certificate in there, you're trusting it. At least how it is today, which is how it is in notation today, minus the trust store policy that's in Alpha 3.
Just so I understand. So today with our notation verifier, you add a bunch like certificates to your cert pool, and those are all considered trusted. And so you're saying that there is an issue where we will accept something even though the certificate from the signature is not in the cert pool?
Yeah.
Well, so today with the trust store and trust policy, you have to specify, like with the Alpha 3, right? You have to not only specify a trusted certificate store, but also have to have a policy to trust the certificates that are in the store. So yeah, it's a lot more complicated, but a lot more, I guess, powerful in a sense.
So is the okay. So the idea here is that, so if today here, if we put something in the cert pool, it's inherently trusted, and you're saying that that model is not appropriate.
Well, so once we move to Alpha 3 and or beyond, I think at this point we're probably going to just wait for RC, based on everything that's, yeah, we talked about earlier today. But I think what you'll have is you'll still pull the certs down. It's just the certs will have to be down, like pulled down in such a way that it creates the actual the trust store and trust policy.
Okay.
That notation realizes. So it's not like today, it's just kind of like you slap them in the right directory on the disk and then you're good, right? In the future, you're gonna have to do a bit more. It'll have to be a bit more work than that.
I see. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the security concern from a what exists perspective. Since I walked through the notary verifier, and I mean, so if you have something signed and the certificate is in our cert pool, it does validate it. And if you have something that's signed and the certificate's not in the cert pool, then you do get back an error saying that the signature doesn't correspond to any root CAs that you have. So from that perspective, are you still saying that there is another issue, Bin? Or is this strictly about reading certs from disk? I guess I'm just trying to understand if the mechanics of the implementation as it exists, considering all of the certs in the cert pool of the verifier trusted, if there is still an issue where you can currently get an unsigned or a signed container through where the cert is not in the cert pool. Are you saying that there's an issue like that?
No. I think if it's from the cert pool, it should be okay.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure there wasn't like some security issue with the existing implementation. So okay, so you're just saying that like we should do trust pool stuff or trust store stuff.
Yeah. So
okay,
yeah.
Got it.
And one more thing that for the notation, because currently I'm working on notation, so we are adding like trust store, trust policy, and so so for notation we have like trust store and trust policy, and we also need to we need to run some commands to like add certs and like configure the trust policy. But for the Ratify, if we want to use the notation, like I'm thinking how we can like use the notation to like configure the notations part of trust policy and store.
Okay, yeah, that's we have a ticket around that, and it was that one that I cut to notation I think last week. So as soon as we get better, yeah, that's a future thing.
Yeah, that's a future thing.
I can post the link to the issue, Ben. But yeah,
okay.
I think there's some things to like, so that points back to the lack of support for local, sign and verify, because that's kind of what Ratify is doing. So, but yeah, I'll post the issue.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Eric, David, and Akash, anything else we want to cover today?
Nothing from my end.
Nothing specific. I guess the only thing I'd say is just to add to what we were talking about last week about the Alpha 3. So we reached out, we post an issue, and it's going to be, we need to do some analysis on the notation side to figure out how to support this. So we're still waiting on that. But so that's closed. I put a link in the action from last week to the issue. But at this point, no further stuff.
Yeah, actually, for the issue you mentioned, we also discussed that. So I think it's currently kind of like conflict with our like RC1 target. So I don't know if I think the PMs are discussing it, but I don't know if we will support this in our RC1 of notation. But I think in our side, if you want to support that, we can just expose like the process signature method, I think.
Yeah, no, I was just calling out for this meeting that here's the tracking issue. So whatever, we can take the time to make sure that we take the right approach, but just want to close the loop on that, at least from the Ratify side.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just reading the thread. Like it looks like the next item is just to like prioritize it. Is it? What is the next action item?
Yeah, I mean, so they need to potentially prioritize. Well, not potentially. They need to prioritize trying to get the local side and verify. There's a lot of kind of a moving target for what is RC1 in notation. So I mean, it's something that we have to work out. But yeah, I think the big thing that we decided today, right, is just that we should probably hold off on Alpha 3 and just not even try and implement it for now. And I know the Alpha 4 is going to be out soon. I think end of next week is what we have. But even that is not going to fix kind of the underlying challenges we have here. And there's, given the other significant changes coming, I think we're kind of holding off on support for trust or trust policy and in Ratify for now. But yeah, I also just went ahead and added an Alpha 2, like 1.1 Alpha 2, tentatively targeted for next week. So we could possibly get the managed identity, and there's quite a few like smaller updates we've had in the past couple months that we can at least get out the door. So I think that'll be a good target to have.
Yep. Sounds good.
So we kind of have like up there on the milestones, we now have kind of three. We've got a beta 1, a beta 2, and an alpha 2, all of which are kind of into September, into October, into November. Okay.
Oh, David, are you talking about the Ratify board?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't added it. Like the alpha 2, I just kind of took what we had already closed out regarding issues, put that into alpha 2. I put the one in there, which is for the ORAS, the one that's the PR that's up there for managed identity.
Yep.
I guess we'll see if we have anything else we think we get done before next week, but at least there's like a lot of PRs that were merged that are like dependency updates and things like that.
We should do a pass through. Yeah,
so it'll be good to just kind of get another release out there and run all of our tests and things and make sure things are working.
Yep, sounds good. Yeah, Xinghe, Akash and I will take another look at the PR and get back to you.
Thank you.
Yep, I think that's all for today. Thanks for joining, everyone. Oh, no, someone else talking in a different meeting. Sorry. Yep. Okay, good to see everyone. See you next week.
That's all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.